When I moved into this new community, I was speaking a different language. I was surrounded by plants I wasn't familiar with or had never seen before. And so that also helped me sort of discover the land around me and like connect with it on different ways, and like what were the uses of this plant, like medicinally or culturally. So a lot of those pieces sort of came into the poem too, to make, a plant poem. At the end of each of these collections, we would have prompts for the readers and the contributors to do. Maybe it was encouraging them to get out in their community or in their garden or their yard or neighborhood, and identify plants, or ask them to look at the wildlife that's around their area. I think it was 40% of the people that responded said that it did inspire some kind of environmental action for them after reading these prompts. And 80% of them actually share the poems that they wrote with their community. That's really been like a big inspiration for us to keep going and explore different themes, and then asking writers and scientists and artists to share their perspective on that theme.
If you're a poet, artist, photographer, writer, or budding creative of any kind, then you might like to listen extra closely to this one. Jamie Nix is the co-founder of Plants and Poetry, whose work shares and nurtures connection to the natural world through a collaborative approach to curating published works. Alongside her poetry, Jamie's career is focused on agroforestry and soil health, and she has a keen interest in supporting regeneration through place-based learning. I'm excited by an emerging co-creation between Plants and Poetry and We Are Carbon. We'll be creating an inspiring anthology together, and I'd love to invite you to help us to fill the pages. It's very early on, but if you check the description, you'll find details for keeping up to date on the process. I'm Helen Fisher. This is We Are Carbon, and throughout Season 4 you'll find new weekly conversations as we keep digging deeper and explore what it means to step into regenerative actions within our own place, creating health and vitality for ourselves, our communities, and the natural world around us, and really igniting a new zest for life. Be sure to subscribe to keep up to date, and check the description for more opportunities for becoming involved. Enjoy the conversation. Hi Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you here. If you could maybe get us started with just a quick introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm Jamie Nix, and I'm based in Northwest Arkansas. I grew up between Oklahoma and Northwest Arkansas, and my day job, I work for a nonprofit in agronomy, crops, and soil science. And then on the side, I have a small business called Plants and Poetry, where we connect writers and poets, scientists through our literary journal that we published back in 2019. So we've been working on building this small collection of different anthologies, publishing independent poets based on different themes. So it might be aquatic plants focused on water, or soil plants. It's really dear to my heart. And then I'm also an agroforestry scientist by training. I got my master's degree from University of Missouri in agroforestry and natural resources, and then got my bachelor's degree in international relations.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm really inspired by the work that you do. I think something that I find really interesting is how you're weaving the world of art and science and community and education, and recognizing that that line's very blurred. So you're bringing this lovely, beautiful, heart-centered artwork through the words, and then on the other side of that is this, the science and the agroforestry. And do you have any thoughts of how that sort of works for you in your mind? Do you find that that's important to have those two sides?
Yeah, and honestly, like, it kind of came to us really organically. Back in 2019, I hadn't even started really my science career. And it was actually with my roommate. She was more of the plants and I was the poetry. Like I really leaned into poetry as a way to heal, a way to process my emotions when I couldn't really articulate them to some of the people closest to me. And so I found myself not even being able to write within my own voice. I would sort of look to either those around me for inspiration, my community. And then with my roommate being the plants, she had a really great green thumb. She could bring any plant back to life, and she has a real gift. And we had all these plants in our house. And so I started to write from the perspective of the plant through my own feelings and like sort of trying to relate to those plants. So I had all these plant poems and I'm like, what am I going to do with these? And so we actually signed up to this lavender festival where we brought these plant poems and then all of her plants. We didn't really know what we were going to do with them. Just her being a gardener, me being the poet and the writer. We wanted to share them. And then we had people come up to us asking us if we had a certain plant poem. Like, do you have an iris poem? Do you have a rose poem? And we didn't. We just had, the ones that were in our house, which were more like house plants. And so we just like saw this need from those that were interested in plants. And that's sort of how they came together, like really just naturally. And then, eventually the Plants and Poetry Journal was born, but it was just holding space for people that were interested in both those elements of their lives, whether it was their houseplants or their garden plants, and then bringing them to life through a poem so that they could connect with it on a different level, like I was able to, which I didn't really anticipate. And then, eventually, as I got more into my master's program through agroforestry, I actually had a professor that shared a poem in one of our courses. And so, yeah, it's been really cool to see how other scientists are able to engage with poetry and teach one another and connect with one another on that level.
It's very lovely listening through. And it makes me wonder if the plants are something that would have come through as a way for you, helping you find your voice and express your emotions. Would that have been something you'd have naturally connected into, do you think, if your friend and partner hadn't already really brought that collaborative aspect through her own passions?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think just different parts of my life, plants have sort of shown up, which like obviously we eat plants every single day and we're surrounded by them. But I didn't really grow up gardening or anything like that. Like my mom had maybe one pothos plant in the house, but it wasn't something that she was really passionate about until most recently. But my great grandmother had a sustenance farm in Marble City, Oklahoma. And, she fed the whole family through that farm. And she had a couple cows, couple pigs, and it was in the forest along the creek line. And I've always heard stories from my aunt growing up just about different elements of our family. And one time this happened, and so-and-so was helping his neighbors find water, or she used to always grow potatoes, and I would be digging in the dirt for those potatoes whenever I wanted to go play outside. So I think a lot of those stories were sort of rooted in me and embedded in me. And so maybe I would have found my way on my own. But it was really fun to discover it with my friend, for sure. And then one other thing I'll share. So my grandmother and my great grandmother living in Marble City, they were really involved in decorating graves, which I think maybe is still very, important to the community, and we honor our dead in different ways. But my great grandmother, they would always decorate these graves. And one day my grandmother was out there with my great grandmother, and it was really hot. And she was just complaining like, gosh, it is so hot out here. Like, I do not want to be decorating these graves all day. And so my great grandmother was like, well, sis, we'll just plant you a tree. And so she actually planted my grandmother a tree in the cemetery. Now both my grandmother and great grandmother are buried under that tree. And like that story has always really stuck with me. And I always wondered if that's why I sort of gravitated towards agroforestry, given the sustenance farm and this special tree that's just there where me and all my family joke about in our group chat that like, who's getting a spot underneath that tree so we're not baking underneath the sun. But yeah, it's just really special to me. So.
Yeah, what a touching story. That is really, really lovely. The obvious connection there of the agroforestry bringing in the practical offering of a tree, just that simplicity of we're hot, the soil's baking, plant a tree. I mean, that's powerful, but it's also such a beautiful, beautiful place that it has got so much meaning now under this tree for you and your family. It's very, I should imagine that's connected in pretty deeply. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
When it comes to the poetry that you wrote prior to the festival that you went to, that was a way for you to find your voice. And when people asked you, could you come up with a poem for this plant and this plant and this plant, how did that differ? What was the experience of finding those particular plant personalities?
I think it really just depended on the needs of the plant. So I would sort of lean into what the sun requirements might be, or water requirements, or what soil it might grow best in, what environment it would thrive in, and then what other plants might be growing around it that would really nurture and complement it instead of compete with it. So I would sort of bring in those pieces as I'd write the plant poem. And then also my relationship with it. So initially, some of the poems that I would write that weren't necessarily house plants, they might be plants I found in my neighborhood. So I actually ended up moving away from home for around 4 years or so. And when I moved into this new community, I was speaking a different language. I was surrounded by plants I wasn't familiar with or had never seen before, or were called a different name. And so that also helped me sort of discover the land around me and like connect with it on different ways. And like, what were the uses of this plant, like medicinally or culturally? So a lot of those pieces sort of came into the poem too, to make, a plant poem.
Perfect. That's really interesting. And if we think now about the sort of wider vision of plants and poetry, you've connected your own emotions into this expressive words, into the poems, and then you're sharing them with community. But there's also a part of your journey where you directly are connecting to the land and growing a food forest. Could you talk a little bit about the connection there?
Yeah. So Leslie Walker is who I worked with. She had actually been introduced to me through that roommate, Kelsey Nelson at the time, the plant roommate. And she introduced me to her, and Leslie had told me that she always had this dream of building, she called it the oasis. And she wanted to have a space in the community where she could grow food and share it. And she was also a teacher by trade. So she wanted to be able to teach the community. And she had children, so she wanted to be able to teach her children and her neighbors' children. And she wanted to also be home, right? So I'm like, we thought, well, why can't you have a forest garden or the oasis at your home? And we can just slowly build it little by little. And so she built it from the ground up. I mean, I think she started probably 8 years ago, little by little, she was planting seeds. But then, the last 4 years or so, we were committed to every submission we would receive from the journal, we would commit to planting a seed in this forest garden, in this community food forest. And so, over the years, she's been planting and growing and sharing her harvest. And with the Plants and Poetry Journal, with all of these submissions and all of these people that were now sort of connected through this place, the oasis, even though they were all over the world, we used different maybe challenges that would come up in the food forest to inspire some of the themes. So there was one point where Leslie wanted to amend the soil, add different amendments in the soil to, obviously make it more healthy. And whether it was compost or mycorrhiza, little amendments that she got. And so we made one theme on Gravity's Grave, which was about soil. And we had 2 issues of those. And then we had one, Wildlife of the Underworld, which is inspired by plants because there was a flood that was happening in her neighborhood. And then we did, gosh, what else? Mycorrhizas, like mycorrhiza fungi. She was finding fungi all along the forest. And then Plant People was sort of our like annual anthology that we just kept coming back to. And so at the end of each of these collections, we would have prompts for the readers and the contributors to do, whether that was a writing prompt or maybe it was encouraging them to get out in their community or in their garden or their yard or neighborhood and identify plants, or ask them to look at the wildlife that's around their area, and just sort of encouraging them through like place-based learning. And we actually did a survey, I think after we published 12 issues or so, and I think it was 40% of the people that responded said that it did inspire some kind of environmental action for them after reading these prompts. And 80% of them actually share the poems that they wrote with their community. So even if they weren't taking direct environmental action, they were still sharing their poems that were, maybe inspired by plants or by water or by soil with the people that are in their life. And so that's really been like a big inspiration for us to keep going and explore different themes and intersections. So we even did one that was Leslie's idea on seeing synergies. So what 2 plants might work really well together. And then asking writers and scientists and artists to share their perspective on that theme.
It's really delightful. It's kind of going off in all different directions, the work, and there's an imitation there of the way that nature evolves. It feels, like it is the mycorrhiza. You are connecting outwards and sharing and connecting people. And so your anthologies and your publications, they're bringing the voices and the expressions and the art of people all over the world. Is that right?
Right. And that's a big part of it was, so we had started, Plants and Poetry in 2019. And in the end of 2019, I moved abroad. And so I had built that connection with Leslie and she had talked about this vision, but I was no longer in the area. And so it was also a way for me to stay connected to the land and with my friends and the plants that I'm familiar with that they were now engaging with on a daily basis. And so, yeah, it really, really was sort of tethered me to where I'm from while I was building this journal abroad and writing and editing while they were on the ground building the food forest.
It's wonderful. We're definitely in a time, I think, where we need to celebrate that connection where we're, global and connecting across the world, but also that place-based action. And for ourselves to connect with the land, but also to connect personally and with the place that we live in. And it seems that that's really important to this work too.
Yeah. So I got my degree in international relations. And like when I was studying this degree, we were sort of pushed to talk about intergovernmental relations and not so much on the whether it's local level or nonprofits that might be communicating and working with one another or universities. And so yeah, I just think it's really beautiful, just international relations from that lens and through art and through poetry and able to connect with one another.
That's incredibly powerful and so many possibilities that it opens up.
Yeah, like us now, you're aware, and I'm in Arkansas.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm here in the UK and completely different times, but I value it so much. It's lovely. Yeah. With this season of the podcast, there's a desire that I have to get people moving from listening and learning into taking action, and just even if it's those small steps. So it's something that I'm keen to kind of throw in there, just a quick tip if you could share something. And I wonder if there's something that has stayed with you that you've recognized people have learned through the expressions that have come together in those prompts that you have in your work. Something where you feel that it's a really good way of experiencing or participating in regeneration that is accessible.
Yeah, it's a good question. One tip. I think inviting others to share their story has been really powerful. Even if it might not be the poem or the piece of art, just sort of leaving that room for flexibility and like co-creation has really been able to. So, for example, we worked with one of my childhood friends. We went to high school together, and we weren't as close, but we still kept, connected through social media and everything. And I saw that she was directing a movie called Poets Are the Destroyers. And even though we were focused maybe on more environmental themes and poetry and plants, she was building this film. And I ended up, working on some social media with her for the film. And we were thinking, like, how can we work together? How can we collaborate on something that will really be meaningful for both of our communities, even though they are pretty different? And we found so many similarities because as we were breaking down sort of the essence of her movie, and it was about an artist and a poet that was sort of breaking, what did she say? She said, oftentimes artists, we destroy in order to create. And so we took that theme with nature and how the cycles of nature and how plants often grow and are planted in the spring, and then we harvest in late summer, and then in the fall might die or decay and then are reborn or come back as perennials in the spring. And so we took that theme and then ended up co-creating an anthology called When Pens Bloom. And so I think like leaving that flexibility and allowing her, whether it was the actors or the script writers, to contribute to this anthology, and then also those that were watching her film contribute to this anthology, as well as the people that were connected to Plants and Poetry Journal. And then we ended up, co-creating this really beautiful collection of art and poetry and storytelling. I think we even had some audio submissions. So yeah, I don't know if that's really a tip, but that's something that came to mind.
It is. It's a lovely tip. I think sharing story is powerful and often overlooked because when it comes to all those tense emotions and anxieties of, the planet's in a bad state or we need change, whatever that change is, there's a tendency for people to go really hard at it and despair and say, well, I see it this way, so you should see it this way. And I think story it softens and it allows to see you through the lens of somebody else. It's that magic of bringing people into a different space. And so I can see that sharing story as a tip is so expansive and so powerful. And I think it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And my aunt, like, she's been like a notorious storyteller within our family. And, she has all these filler words that she will say, and not filler words, they're truly genuinely a part of her storytelling. And every time I hear someone say it, it just like brings me back to a moment that she might have shared with all of us. And it's always oral storytelling. She's never written anything down. She's not, making anything, even though she's been a huge lover of poetry. But, yeah, I just felt called to share that.
No, it's lovely. Where are things now with plants and poetry? What's your focus?
Well, so Leslie, I had mentioned before building the Oasis, she's sort of taking a different route. She's building a nature school, where she'll be going to different areas in the community. It might be like a local park or a local farm, and sort of stepping away from offering forest therapy at the Oasis. And so, initially when we had started Plants and Poetry, before I was introduced to Leslie, Kelsey and I had wanted to commit to planting a seed within our neighborhoods. So I think that's sort of the route we're taking now, is that for every submission we receive, we'll plant a seed in our neighborhoods. And I'd like to work with some of the like garden clubs that are in the area here. They tend to manage a lot of our trails. And Also building some more art and agroforestry education programs. So I'm working with an artist, Erica Dionora. She's out of Canada, and she's an artist, an incredible designer and poet. So her and I are co-creating on a couple different things. And then with my background in agroforestry, I'd like to create some accessible materials that can be available through plants and poetry. We've talked about doing like a coloring book about tree crops, or a writing guide that might be inspired by different agroforestry practices. So we've also got on Substack, which is like social media, and it's been a really cool experience to get immersed into the Substack community because there's so many writers and poets on there. So I think just the more I lean into that space, I can see what people need and want to engage with. For me, on a like personal level, like I'm working with Erica and another writer, Heidi Sander, out of Canada, and we're writing a cookbook. And so it'll have elements of poetry and recipes and art in it that we'll publish through Plants and Poetry. And then we're also working with like several different poets to publish their own independent poetry collections. So there's Lucia Coppola in California and Lisa Lundin in North Carolina and Alexandra Kravecki Kramer in Vermont. And so each of them have their own poetry collections. So I think just helping them promote their work, and yeah, just working on those things.
That's lovely. Is the theme that comes through with the collaborators, it's always still there on the plant world?
Yeah, probably plants, food, community. Those are probably the main ones that come up. But it's not always the poems need to be about plants necessarily. I think it can be about your relationships that might be compared to plants, or the land and where you live and who you connect with. We actually have an open call for submissions for rituals and remedies. It'll be our second volume to do that. And so it's not just about plants. It might just be like how you wake up in the morning, and who do you wake up in the morning? What do you say? Prayer. Because oftentimes I feel like poetry for me is a form of prayer, in a way that I'm able to really articulate my feelings and connection to those around me. So not just plant poems, but they're certainly a big piece of it.
It really demonstrates how that it can weave into all of the different aspects of being human. Talking, starting there with the plants, but spreading outwards. Okay, so if we just put you on the spot now, what is your favorite plant that you've worked with?
Oh gosh, my favorite plant. That's tough. We're actually, me and Erica and one of our guest editors, Megan Perry, we actually gave ourselves this task to come up with our favorite plant by our next meeting, which is May 10th. And we're going to do some things with this favorite plant. And I don't have mine yet. Like the first one that comes to mind is not even my favorite plant. It's my mom's, which is a lily, because it's also another one of my friend's favorite plants. And then the date palm comes to mind. Dates, I love dates. And hibiscus really comes to mind. Leslie, she has a lot of Rose of Sharon trees on her property. And I never knew how many like medicinal uses that you can use from the Rose of Sharon or the hibiscus flower. I have sunflowers in my house, a lot of sunflowers. The spider plant is a very easy house plant for anyone that is just getting started. So yeah, I probably can't name just one, but there's several that come to mind that are sort of inspired by those around me.
Brilliant. No, that's nice. A whole list, and they're very varied and filling people's life with joy and lots of different options. Thank you. And
do you have a favorite?
My favorite plant. I'm going to be just as vague. I have so many, and I suppose it depends on the day, but I love the cliche of the rose and just the sort of, I don't know, that's like so fragile and so delicate, but also really kind of holds itself. There's something just in that beauty of the rose. God, I love the beauty of the rose. But then there's so many plants that I surround myself, because I have a food forest, and I'm introducing new plants every year, and they're like, it's just like adding in another friend. And yeah, I would struggle just as much as you with that question. But yeah, so I would like to finish up by asking you if there's something we can do together. I think that the plants and poetry and We Are Carbon, we're sort of vibing in this same area. The focus that I have is so aligned with the idea of bringing lots of different contributions, sharing knowledge and inspiration, and then taking that place-based action. So maybe there's something in that, just a little simple thing that we could weave together.
Yeah, I would love that. Whether that is, collaborating on like a new anthology or incorporating We Are Carbon into some of the existing ones we have pending, like Rituals and Remedies and then Plant People. Those will both be published this year, but I would be happy to, for sure. And there's actually a group that I just found out Erica had told me about it. It's Eco Poeticon. Have you worked with them ever?
I haven't, no, something new for me
Okay.
to look at.
I'll have to like send them to you because they're in the UK. And where are you at in the UK?
I'm in Lincolnshire, so
Okay,
sort of East
okay,
Coast.
okay. Which I'm gonna butcher this name where it is. Gloucestershire.
Okay, Gloucestershire is yeah, not particularly close, but definitely closer than you are.
Okay, yeah. Well, they have an amazing website, and yeah, I just thought of you because a lot of their artwork they have on their homepage, it reminds me of We Are Carbon, some of your illustrations,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
yeah, it might be cool to connect with them. But otherwise, I would be more than happy to work with you on bringing We Are Carbon and plants and poetry together because I really admire the work that you're doing, and any chance I get to share your illustrations online, I definitely do.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. And likewise, I just feel that there's so much that you're offering through plants and poetry. It feels gentle and sort of nourishing, but also really, really expansive. There's something there that it could weave into so much, and if I can support that, I would be delighted to. Um, how do people learn about what you're doing, find the products that you've got for sale, and get involved?
Typically, we have a newsletter that goes out every month, and so that's really where we're communicating the bulk of our updates, things that we have going on, call to submissions. We're doing a plant of the month, seasonal gardening advice. We'll include some poetry prompts in these newsletters, and so we send that through Substack, and then we have our website, plantsandpoetry.org, and then we are on Instagram, but we've sort of gravitated towards Substack since we've been building the community over there. So yeah, those are two good places to start. So yeah, I think the newsletter is probably the biggest piece that we have that's reoccurring.
Fantastic. And are your publications available primarily online, or can people go and pick them up elsewhere?
Yeah. So we have our online journal shop where we have, notebooks, garden journals, poetry anthologies and collections, coloring books, that you can buy online for like the print physical copy. And then all of our online poetry collections, they're available to read for free. You can actually read through them on our website. And then there's several different stores around the US that do carry some of our collections and notebooks. So you can find them sometimes out in a store, which is always wonderful, but mainly in our journal shop online.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It has been hugely inspirational talking to you, learning more, and I feel like I want to head over and read more of the poems, because they're I'm really, really loving it all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to working together on something with We Are Carbon and Plants and Poetry. So
Thank you. Amazing. Yes, let's get it sorted. If you enjoyed this episode, then be sure to check the description for the links to learn more and engage with the work from Jamie and Plants and Poetry. And of course, there's the exciting opportunity to keep up to date about contributing to our emerging Plants and Poetry and We Are Carbon co-created anthology. Info is in the description. Don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date. I'm Helen Fisher. This is We Are Carbon, and let's keep figuring this all out together.